The long road to the moon, from dreams to Artemis 2. Long before rockets tore through the sky and computers whispered trajectories into the void, the moon was simply a distant lantern. It hung above deserts and oceans alike, unchanged by wars, borders, or generations. Ancient astronomers mapped its phases, poets wrote of its silence, and children pointed at it with questions no one could answer. For centuries, humanity imagined walking on its surface, but imagination was the only spacecraft available. That began to change in the 20th century, when mathematics, engineering, and ambition collided. The world was tense, divided by ideology and power. Nations competed not only for territory on Earth, but for prestige beyond it. The moon became more than a symbol, it became a destination. Scientists studied gravity, propulsion, and orbital mechanics. Engineers built engines powerful enough to lift machines that weighed more than entire neighborhoods. Test rockets rose, failed, exploded, and rose again. Every failure was a lesson written in smoke. The earliest missions were fragile. Capsules barely larger than cars carried humans into orbit, testing whether the human body could survive weightlessness. Astronauts trained in centrifuges that spun them until their vision blurred. They practiced underwater to simulate lunar gravity. They learned how to fix systems with gloved hands, how to navigate by stars, and how to survive alone in silence. The unknown was everywhere. Would bones weaken? Would minds panic? Would machinery fail millions of kilometers from home? Rockets evolved quickly. They grew taller, louder, and more complex. Thousands of workers assembled them piece by piece. The guidance computers were primitive by modern standards, yet revolutionary for their time. Each mission moved a little farther, orbiting Earth, then looping around the moon, then testing landing procedures. The risks were enormous. A single faulty valve or wiring error could doom a crew. And tragedy did strike. A cabin fire during a ground test took the lives of 3 astronauts, reminding everyone that space exploration demanded a price. The program paused, redesigned, and continued, more cautious but no less determined. Then came the giant rocket, the towering machine capable of carrying humans to another world. Its engines ignited with a thunder that shook coastlines. Flames spread beneath it like a sunrise, and slowly, impossibly, the rocket lifted. Millions watched on television. It rose beyond clouds, beyond blue skies, into blackness. The crew inside felt the crushing force of acceleration, then suddenly, weightlessness. Earth shrank behind them, becoming a marble swirling with clouds. The journey to the moon was quiet compared to launch. The spacecraft drifted through space, guided by careful burns of its engine. The crew checked systems, photographed Earth, and prepared for landing. As they approached the moon, its craters sharpened into harsh relief. Shadows stretched long across mountains formed billions of years earlier. The landing module separated, descending slowly. Dust billowed beneath its engine. Fuel ticked down dangerously low. Alarms sounded, yet the pilot guided it manually, searching for a safe patch of ground. When the landing legs touched the lunar surface, silence followed. A message traveled across space. The landing was successful. Hours later, a hatch opened. A ladder unfolded. A boot pressed into gray dust, untouched for eons. Humanity had crossed an invisible boundary. The first steps were careful, almost hesitant. The surface was powdery and bright. Movements were slow in reduced gravity. The astronauts planted a flag, deployed experiments, and collected samples. They looked up at Earth, small, fragile, glowing, and understood something profound. The moon had not changed humanity. Humanity's perspective had changed. More missions followed. Crews explored valleys, drove rovers, and studied geology. They learned that the moon told the story of the solar system's violent youth. Rocks returned to Earth, revealed impacts older than life itself. Technology improved, better suits, longer stays, more ambitious science. But eventually the program slowed, budgets tightened, priorities shifted, and the moon once again became distant. The final crew departed, leaving footprints that would remain undisturbed for centuries. Decades passed, satellites orbited Earth, space stations housed astronauts continuously, robotic probes traveled to Mars and beyond, yet the moon remained unfinished business. A new generation grew up hearing stories of the first landings, They asked new questions. Could it be a stepping stone to Mars? Could international cooperation replace competition? These questions shaped a new era. Engineers designed a powerful rocket once again, built with lessons from the past. Spacecraft were larger, safer, and capable of deep space travel. The mission architecture aimed not just to land, but to sustain exploration. Lunar orbit would host a small station. Crews would practice long-duration missions. Technology for Mars would be tested in the lunar environment. Before any landing, however, humans had to return to deep space. That is where Artemis 2 entered the story. Artemis 2 was not just another mission. It was a bridge between eras. It would carry astronauts farther from Earth than any human had traveled in decades. The crew trained intensely. They practiced emergency procedures repeatedly: cabin depressurization, navigation loss, communication blackouts. They rehearsed manually controlling the spacecraft, just in case automation failed. The spacecraft itself underwent rigorous testing. Heat shields blasted with plasma, parachutes deployed at high altitude, engines fired again and again. Launch day arrived with a familiar tension. The rocket stood on the pad, gleaming under floodlights before dawn. Engineers monitored thousands of sensors. The crew boarded, sealed the hatch, and waited. When ignition came, the engines roared with controlled fury. The rocket climbed steadily, leaving behind a pillar of fire. Soon it reached orbit, then accelerated toward the moon. Unlike landing missions, Artemis 2's objective was to loop around the moon and return, a proving flight. The crew witnessed Earth receding into the distance. Communication delays grew slightly longer. They practiced navigation using stars and onboard systems. As the moon approached, its far side came into view, a rugged landscape unseen from Earth. For a brief time, the spacecraft passed behind the moon, cutting off communication. It was a moment of isolation, humans alone on the far side of another world. Then the spacecraft emerged, signals returned. The crew transmitted images of Earth rising above the lunar horizon. Their journey validated systems that would soon support landings again. They tested life support endurance, radiation shielding, and spacecraft performance in deep space. Every data point mattered. The return journey carried its own risks. Re-entry from lunar velocity generated extreme heat. The spacecraft hit the atmosphere at tremendous speed. Plasma formed around it, glowing brighter than any meteor. Communication blackout returned briefly, then parachutes deployed. The capsule splashed down in the ocean, marking success. Artemis 2 proved humanity could again send people beyond low Earth orbit. The mission represented more than technical achievement. It symbolized continuity. The same dream that began with ancient stargazers now continued with modern explorers. The moon was no longer just a destination reached once. It was becoming part of a long-term plan. Future missions would land near the lunar South Pole, where shadows hid ice. Habitats would be tested, rovers would travel farther than before, and beyond that, Mars waited. From the first fragile rockets to Artemis 2, the journey to the moon was never simple. It was shaped by setbacks, bravery, and persistence. Engineers worked through sleepless nights. Astronauts accepted risks few others would. Families watched launches with pride and fear intertwined. Each mission carried the weight of those before it, and the hopes of those yet to come. The moon still rises each night, unchanged, but humanity is different now. It has walked there, left instruments, returned with knowledge, and prepared to go again. Artemis 2 stands as a turning point. Not the first step, but the step that leads to many more. The story of humanity and the moon is no longer about reaching it once. It is about returning, staying, learning, and eventually using that experience to travel even farther. And somewhere in the lunar dust, the old footprints remain, waiting for new ones to join them.